do that. I'm too shy. I'm too reserved. I just can't get up in front of people. I can't do things like that. Oh, that's fine. I says, maybe someday you'll feel a little more comfortable. Pray about it, Jeremy. Well, about 6 months went by, and I noticed one Sunday he wasn't in the usual spot. And I came around the corner, and there he is standing at the door, all dressed up, kind of almost like at attention. And I said to him, what are you doing out here? And he said, have you been officially welcomed to your parish today? I says, no, sir, I have not. And he shook my hand. He said, welcome to St. John's. I'm your greeter. Now, that doesn't sound like anything big, but it was for him. It was for him. He got over the fear of shyness and that, or whatever it was. And I said to him months later, I says, what changed your mind, Jeremy? What changed your mind? And he says, I started to think about how much I appreciated people greeting me when I first came here. And it changed my life. And I said, that it has. That's a stewardship story. Maybe sounds smaller than the Mike Piazza and Tom Allen one, but it's just as powerful. Today, he still is a greeter for us, and I still tell him every time I come, I still say, I'm going to make you famous, Jeremy. Your story's going to be told. He says, good, maybe it'll change some people's minds about stepping up. Maybe they'll get people to look in the rearview mirror to think about what they've been given and what they're grateful for so that they can move forward. And it does. And it does in our parish. The next chapter of our story really started to make us look at those stories within our parish and made us really, really kind of humbled. We were humbled by many of them. One such story is one that I always tell at these conferences, and it's more serious, but it's certainly more profound. And it's Mary's story, and some of you have heard this, but I need to say it again. And sometimes I get choked up when I tell it because it's profound. Mary was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and about 5 months later she passed away. But during that time, the first time I had visited her after the diagnosis, she was accepting of her fate. But the one thing that concerned her is that she didn't know if she was a very faithful steward. She said, I don't think I made much of a difference in people's lives. And so we talked about that a little bit, but I saw in the picture on the wall, there she was in a Navy uniform. In fact, you have that story and her picture of her. And I says, tell me about that. Well, I was a wave in the Navy during World War II. And she says, in those days, they didn't let us women into the war zones. We were on the bases and we were doing all kinds of things. And she said, so I was in San Diego doing office work during World War II. And then she started to recall. It was almost like her mind, you could see in her face that her mind was taking her back to that time. And she said, during my lunch hours, I would go down to the docks and I would welcome the ships home that were carrying my dead brothers, family members of people I never, ever met. She says, I would stand there and I would pray for them. She said, I pray the rosary sometimes. I look kind of funny standing there in her uniform praying the rosary. But I think some people knew exactly what I was doing. She would pray the rosary. She would be the family that was waiting for them to come home. And she was very proud of that. And she should have been. And so she regarded her as family to those of people that she never ever knew. As she was telling me the story, I was stunned. As she was telling me the story, it was almost like her face lit up with a revelation. And she said, she said, I think that was my stewardship. Using those words. It wasn't her patriotism, it was her stewardship. It's what I could give back for what they gave me. And so, Mary recognized that, and we were all kind of astounded by that story. When Mary died 5 months later, she was buried with full military honors. And I told the story of what she did during World War II at the funeral. Her family had never known that. Her family, our parish, didn't know that was her stewardship until we told them. And so we stood at her graveside. We were the grateful citizens. We were the grateful citizens that day, her family and myself, for her service to this country, for her love and her concern for many others, and for her simple and authentic faith. And her stewardship became ours. Became our stewardship that day that she was laid to rest. It was our privilege then to stand at attention as she did many years before, to pray and thank God for the stewardship that Mary had demonstrated so long ago. And we thank God that we had the opportunity to do for her what she did for many others. And with all humility, we today, our parish, I can stand up in front of you and say, that's our stewardship, and always will be. You got stories like that. There are people like Mary in your parish, in your families. That's the stewardship way of life. It's the stewardship way of living, loving, caring. It's a stewardship way of discipleship. And you and I stand in the front of all of these people every day, every chance we have, with the possibilities of helping them to recognize that in their life so their faces can light up, their hearts can glow, and Jesus can say to them, well done, good and faithful servant. Stewardship isn't about a program or anything that's like that. Stewardship is about a way of life. It was Mary's way of life. It was Tom Allen's way of life. It was Mike Piazza's way of life. It's Jeremy's way of life. It's every member of St. John the Apostle. Even if they don't quite get it yet, it's their way of life. Someone once said to me, well, what about the ones who don't get it? And we've got those. We have some that still don't understand that stewardship is a way of life. They think it's a program in order to get more money out of them. Shame on them. But I don't tell them that way. But that's where they are. They're stuck in that myth. I have to be more compassionate to them because I was one of those people for 18 years as a pastor. And now we can't give up on them. We have to keep praying for them. We have to keep inviting them. We keep hoping that somewhere along the line, conversions are waiting to be happening in our parish. And so we have to keep preaching. We have to keep talking. We have to keep sharing those stories. We have to bring them to the surface. We have to highlight them and be grateful for them and let other people know about them by coming to conferences or putting them in their newsletters. Because the stewardship way of life is a way of us to be disciples of Jesus Christ in a very practical, very understandable, very possible way. Whether you're a pastor, a layperson, we are all leaders in this desire to evangelize, to use the word that's happening right now in our church, to evangelize a way of life. It's all over the Gospels. It's all over every kind of different readings you want to think about. It's in people's personal stories. It's in our hearts. And so you and I live that stewardship way of life. At least we're trying and moving in a direction that's going to continue to help us. But things will happen to us. In 2011, our parish, our city of Minot became flooded. The little river that's called the Mouse, that runs through Minot, North Dakota, flooded. The Mouse that roared, flooded and evacuated 11,000 people looking for shelter. They found it. But over 4,000 homes were completely destroyed, were flooded. And I thought to myself, now what will stewardship do in a parish? A third of our families lost their homes, you know. I came here in August to this conference, and I was really emotional about talking about what had happened. In fact, I was fearful. I was fearful that the stewardship was going to be washed away with the mud and the murk and all the the garbage of the Minot flood of 2011, which was the worst disaster in 100 years in our city. And I sat down with Eric McCardle, and I told him, I don't think we're going to survive this. I think that our stewardship is going to be challenged. It's going to be devastated. I just don't think we're going to be able. And he said, well, what kind of foundation do you have? You've been doing this for 6 years. There's something there yet that no floodwater can wash away. People's attitudes were changed. People's spirituality was stronger. Their trust in God was stronger. Their ability to reach out to others is stronger. What do you think is missing that's going to crush your stewardship? And then he said, I think he said also, where's your trust in God? And he said, let's wait and see what happens. Every year, our stewardship numbers had increased a little bit. That year, I expected at least 30% reduction because 30% of our families lost their homes. What could I expect from them? Instead, people's commitment to time, what they were willing to devote to their spiritual lives, skyrocketed. It was the highest that we'd had in 7 years. The talent part was down only a little bit, but not what we thought. And the treasure, it went up 20%. Go figure. You know, I really believed then, well, Eric was absolutely right. He said, you know, what about the foundation? When people were trying to rebuild their homes, the first thing they had to check to see whether or not they could or not was what? The foundation. If it was still intact, you build on it. Well, our stewardship went the same way. It went the same way. And I'll tell you, there wasn't a year that, unlike that one, that we weren't more grateful for what God had given to us in spite of rebuilding. So our stewardship way, the foundation of our stewardship survived the great flood of 2011. It survives in different ways. It's challenged in different ways, but it is still what we are committed to because, to be honest with you, we still look out that front windshield and see all kinds of possibilities. They're right there in front of us. And there are more Mary Karhoffs in our story. There are more Tom Allens and Mike Piazzas and other people and Jeremys who have come to realize that the stewardship is their call. The stewardship way of life is the way they are called to live. And there are some that question it and they say, you know, I did that once, but I don't know if I can continue. I'd like to say to them what Eric said to me. What kind of foundation do you have? Because I think that tells the whole story. And sometimes people will respond to it in different ways, but nevertheless, even at times when I kind of falter, stewardship is alive and well in Minot, North Dakota, 887.6 miles from here, 80 miles south of the Canadian border. Even when it's freezing or hot, it's still continuing. And there are times I admit, as a pastor, I worry about it. There are times I wonder if we're regressing. I wonder if we're looking too much in the rearview mirror. But then I'm reminded of the story, like I just told you. You've got to look forward. If you want to go forward, look forward. Look at the big windshield. Look out at the big picture. And that will change you. So you come here, like I did 8 years ago. You come here and you find and hear stories that many of us will have to tell you. You know, stories of possibilities. Stories of the stewardship way of life. Stories that can make you laugh. Stories that can make you cry. But they're stories, they're our history. They're stories of a stewardship experience that continues to develop in our parish and yours. I believe in possibilities. Do you? So that's the question you have to ask. The possibilities of stewardship becoming your way of life. The possibilities of stewardship becoming so ingrained that you live and breathe and certainly accept discipleship as your most important thing in your life. Stewardship will help you do that. You have some stories that you can take home with you that we're involved in. There are lots of people around that you can talk and share with. One last comment, the folder that you have is something that we started in our parish because it's something that we want other people to maybe experience, that we bring people together to talk about stewardship. We are not experts. St. John the Apostle Church is not an expert in the stewardship way of life. But we thought it's important for us to have a forum where people in our diocese could come together and talk about it. Talk about the things that are happening. Talk about their stories of Mary Karhoff's and Jeremy's and others. We learn from each other, and so St. John's is hosting those institutes because we believe that a gift has been given, and when that is so, a gift should be shared. So hopefully it's a gift that we can give to others, and we will continue to do that. So I threw a folder in there. You certainly are welcome to come to Minot, but it's also an idea that you might want to take back and say, what do we do when we become a developing stewardship parish, and how do we share that with others? I really want to thank you for your attention here this afternoon and for your listening, but most importantly for the common bond that you and I share that has brought us here. Whatever reason, whoever it was, however it was that you got here, I still believe we are bonded together with you. No matter where we're from, no matter where we go back to, no matter how large or how small we are called to faithful stewardship, and that means we are committed to the stewardship way of life. May God bless you, your parish families, and all that you serve and all that you do in recognizing all the possibilities that you have awaiting you. Thank you.